I was going to ask, does that mean we actually know what we're talking about?
I think for the most part, we're kind of going over the tasks that were done.
Okay.
That's kind of what I pictured today going, because for the most part, I think we have an idea of what the future kind of looks like. So I'll share my screen and kind of go over what I saw with when I pulled the metrics. Cool. So what I did was basically make the same 3 queries for all regions, and then AMER, APAC, and EMEA. The idea was basically separate the tickets by the category they are. Spoiler, some of these didn't exist. So like security incident didn't exist until December. But what I did was, okay, past 6 months, what's the percentage that they are? And then I kind of did this fun thing where it looks at the FRT and wait times of each of the categories. So we can kind of see like, okay, where's it look really bad? Whatever that red one was is clearly the one that looks really bad. Let's see. Oh, there it is. And then I clicked, so it's not going to show anymore. Request wait time hours for free customer problems. So yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But I ended up breaking this down by each region just to kind of see, was there one region that got more of one tickets than the other? Was there like a huge number of variants? This was the most interesting part, was somehow in November and December, there's no free customer problems for APAC. And I'm not sure what that means, because I'm like, wait, no, that can't be the case unless y'all got lucky for like, what is that, 60 days? Like I don't feel like that's what happened. But what I saw was, generally speaking, and it's easier to look at the percentages here, they look about the same. Like there's not a huge level of variance between them. So like sauce account was the highest there, sauce account's the highest there. And when you look at AMER, yeah, sauce account. So they pretty much look the same, which is good, because this means when we have to talk about distribution, it's like, that means they're basically the same from region to region. So we don't have to worry about, oh, APAC needs this many sauce agents, but this many self-managed, and we don't have to worry about that varying from region to region, because they generally look like the same percentages of work. Not to say that like some of these take the same amount of work as others. Like sauce account tickets, while there are more of them, usually take less work than in-depth CI/CD problems. So what I'm basically seeing is they look like the same, but it helps us kind of illustrate of, this one is solely a sauce focused one, and it generates a good amount of the volume of our queues. It's almost 30%. It's almost, it's more than a quarter of the tickets we get are sauce account tickets for February, at least. Looking at past months, it pretty much runs along that same kind of, volume of, yeah, those genuinely are a quarter or more of our tickets, which tells us when doing the distribution, what we need to kind of look at is, right, those are the most, but what's the average time it takes like one person to resolve one of those, and then perhaps go, okay, well, right, so looking at our average trend, kind of figure stuff out there. I think that's where we're going to get into the more complicated parts of the distribution, but that's where we all get to work together and figure out how to do those equations. So thoughts on the metrics so far? And if anybody doesn't have access to this dashboard, please let me know, because I think I shared it with everybody, but I may have screwed that up.
I'm just being distracted by the fact that we basically had no free customer problems in any region in November, December, which has got nothing to do with this discussion. It's just distracted me somewhat.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. And my guess is those are times when things were changing in Zendesk. So my guess is something changed to remove those almost completely and then was brought back to fix it. I don't know what that is. In theory, we want to see that number, this level of low. That's what we want to see. We want to see it getting lower and lower and lower as we reduce the free customer problems. A big thing to keep in mind with this, I'm trying to think real quick before I say this. These are unlisted, so we should be fine. A thing to keep in mind is the consumption stuff coming into play. Stuff like we're looking to apply an SLA on CI minute tickets and storage tickets and stuff like that. So right now, non-paid customers who are filing CI minute questions, are being filed as free customer problem tickets, but they won't be once they kind of have an SLA, because we won't classify them as free, we'll classify them as consumption. So that is one thing to keep in mind, is we'll see a reduction, but based on my current research into that, it's a very low volume month over month, so it won't really influence this much. I think for the month of January, we were looking at maybe 15 of them were CI minute related tickets for free customers, or free and paid. So it's like we're looking at a small volume right now, but potentially more in the future.
Just to check, this is showing the count of tickets with that form, not the number of responses on tickets with that form, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So it's instances of tickets. So.
Yeah, this is instances of the tickets, and it's mostly using the problem type from the tickets. Some of them are a little tweaked, like CI/CD is taking 4 different problem types into play. So what I did was create a custom asset or a custom metric for that to say, if it's this or this or this or this, it's CI/CD. For ones that had multiple in both like sauce and self-managed and maybe even free, that's kind of what I did for them, was say, right, these are all this problem type. And then basically, if it was none of these other things, we're going to call it other, but other could in fact just be mislabeled tickets. That one would require us looking over every ticket, and I'm going to guess no one here wants to volunteer to look at what I easily see as at least 4,000 tickets.
Not if it doesn't get us any gains.
Nah, it really wouldn't. I don't yes, that's a significant number of tickets over the past 6 months, but like I don't see it changing the percentages that we're seeing now. Unless literally every one of like licensed tickets were marked other, but they shouldn't have been. That would actually be indicative of a bigger problem. Cool. Go ahead and stop sharing my screen. But yeah, that's kind of what I've got on the metrics so far. And I broke it down by region just in case, like when Jane wants to go talk to Sean and VG and Wei Ming and all them about this, there's an APAC chart, so she can kind of be like, this is what we need to focus on as APAC. But we should keep in mind, what the other regions are doing as well. Luckily, all the numbers are mostly the same, but there could be variances, and APAC might come down to APAC going, we need one more sauce account person than what EMEA is saying they need. There's also team sizes to keep in mind. So it's like, right, APAC might say, yeah, we need 27% of our team, but that might end up being 2 people.
I wonder if we need an equivalent view that shows responses per rather than just ticket instances, because some of those ticket types will only require 1 response or 2, whereas a lot of them might require 5, 6, or 7 on a consistent basis. I'm
thinking what you're asking for is total number of replies for tickets in that category, and then average number of replies per ticket in that category.
Yeah. Just to give us a slightly better idea of, because if you've got 10 that only require 1 response and 2 that each require 10, that's a different level of, applying headcount to service those needs.
Cool. Yeah, and with the exception of the free customer ones where like NRT is obviously off the charts, I think that also kind of helps us see how long they languish. It's not an absolute metric, but I think we can also look at it and go, right, so it's either languishing because we in general ignore that type of ticket, or those tickets take longer to work, so that it has more time with an agent sitting there working the ticket.
Yeah, the free tickets one I'm pretty keen for us to do something with, because we don't have a means to address them at the moment. I know that's an aside from this topic, but me and Kenneth have been talking about it. Actually, yeah, he's got ways. So yeah.
I know, like me and Ilya just worked together to figure out a trigger to start auto replying to free tickets, and at least maybe like remind them of, it should only be these categories, reply back if it is, otherwise please see community. Like we're trying to figure out how can we get rid of the free tickets that we really shouldn't be working. Part of that might just honestly be like at some point saying, there's no reason a free customer should reach out to GitLab support. In theory, if they're having issues, they should be reaching out via issues to GitLab if it's that big of a deal. I don't know. I think that's like a discussion that eventually we need to have of like, if the concept is we shouldn't be doing support for free customers, why are we making exceptions of, except for these things? We need to say, well, if it's we never should, then we never should. We should figure out where free customers should go when it's general support, which would be community, or this is specifically a GitLab related problem that y'all have to fix. The answer is, it then talk to support, or should it be those should be GitLab issues on the GitLab project, or something. Of course, then we're just going to have the problem of free customers flooding that with a bunch of tickets, with a bunch of issues or whatever. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair enough to like keep it the way it is, more or less, right? Because you think about like if people like open a random, like we have random users, but also even customers writing about everything GitLab, right? And even things that we don't actually support, we respond with, hey, we don't support this, right? You know, here's what you can maybe do. And then they'll often still, you know, write back and be like, that doesn't work for me, you know, like, and we're obviously still spending time resolving these tickets even. Anyways, I think having the autoresponder, which is added, I think we can see what that does.
yeah. I think it's been a constant struggle, like especially with me, of trying to figure out how can I remove needs org and free tickets. It's something I constantly challenge myself to figure out. The problem is a lot of it's like, right, we're just gonna have to do trial and error until we find the magic formulas that work. Because like we tried, okay, what if we put them in their own problem type? Yep, that worked. Now they all go to that problem type. So now they're all in the same place. Cool, but not quite what we were looking for. We tried an overzealous autoresponder. That did not go well at all. It was overzealous. It auto-responded to too much. So I think it's finding the right combination of things of how can we prevent tickets, which would be ticket deflection, so like good documentation, redirection, stuff like that, but also, right, but how can we easily determine when we should basically not be working a ticket at all? I think there's also a like point to be said of like the free customer types is like those would be honestly the lowest level of priority when it comes to tickets because they're free, they don't have SLA. So like honestly, even if we as a team or like each region's like we'll put one person to work those tickets, that's honestly probably more than it should technically get if there's tickets with SLA that exist. But you know, there's problems like 500 errors and stuff like that where yeah, we do have to actually be the ones to work it, but we get to it when we get to it, kind of deal. I don't know. I think free problem types are the complicated issue on that one. And for sake of this work group, we should say we're going to keep them where they are and they'll be their own category. But in the future, we as a team, we as a department, whatever the technical term is for support, should figure out what we're going to do about this massive collection of tickets that quite honestly just gets bigger by the day because they do pile up.
I got lots of thoughts on it, but I'm trying not to go down that rabbit hole, knowing which one we talk about the areas of focus more so, and they are a small group compared to everything else. So I'm going to hold my tongue.
Feel free to make discussion issues, though. Always welcome to make discussion issues when you have ideas for it.
Robbie, but I agree with your point. I mean, we can leave them where they are for now, but I definitely agree with you. We need to figure it out, like what to do with them. And I think the answer is very simple. We need to find a way for them not to exist anymore, not to allow them to be created, and that's pretty much where we need to go. Yeah, Jane, you're thinking the same, I can guess, but that's pretty much where we would need to figure it out later on. But for now, I will just say leave them there, not worry too much, and then that will be another conversation.
Sounds good. Next topic was, Jane, did you have a chance to kind of sync with Wei Ming as he's trying to figure out how to bridge that gap of sauce and self-managed?
Yeah, I did. And he's in a space where his OKR is kind of as he got into it, he kind of went, okay, this isn't going to go the way that I thought it would, like anything. So he's kind of changing tack on it a wee bit, but will still end up looking at where he's at now. I think it will still end up somewhere that's really going to help. He's looking at how to, I don't want to put words in his mouth because it's in a very draft phase at the moment, but he's just looking at how our onboarding actually works and the way that we've got, you know, a big chunk of here is everything SaaS and here is everything self-managed, and thinking about ways that we can actually create some more, you know, here is everything to do with CI/CD, regardless of what architecture it's sitting on. So, so it is still going to help, but yeah, he's still working on what he's actually, you know, what effort and what results he's going to get out of that. But I still think it will contribute to this significantly.
Awesome. And yeah, like that's honestly something I've kind of looked at and thought as well, is like I see CI/CD stuff for like, here's sauce CI/CD, here's self-managed. I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing. The only difference is where the GitLab lives. And 9 times out of 10, like, I prefer working sauce CI/CD tickets because I can go look at the logs right there and then. Whereas instead I have to be like, please send the job logs, and we'll get like a link from the customer's self-managed customer's instance. And I'm like, now please send them so I can read them, because I can't read your URL that's behind your private network.
On that topic, I also have an OKR in that same idea as well as BG. I was talking with Wei Ming the other night, so to make sure that we are not both pushing the same rock. And we have different approaches, and what we agree on is we will make all of these, and each one of us will be doing one piece. So what I am doing is, first, I would like to figure it out exactly how much is onboarding and what is the time that, how we consume the time for onboarding to be that, you know, that long. And then what I would like to replicate is something that some results that I see with Mario, that basically, and not to extend too much, Mario is able now to work tickets in all the queues. Like, he can get self-managed.com or LNR even. So he is just like, the way that he works is, I just see what ticket needs attention regardless of what the type of tickets it is. So that's what I'm trying to duplicate. And the way that I'm doing that is, I am finding what is consuming the time in the onboarding initially. I'm trying to remove those blockers. And then with the time that we gain, I will try to start doing what I did with him, which is basically starting.com. And then when he jumped to self-manage, he's not going to learn like, this is how you install it, this is where the files are. He's going to learn, this is the difference as for an approach for a self-managed ticket versus to what you are using.com. So it will be like patching the differences instead of learning a lot initially. As time goes by, I'll be focusing on, you know, people maybe getting more architecture and more details, but initially I want them to know what is different from here to here. So that is pretty much what I am. That is my idea. I have an OKR open. I put some of it today about the times and about the things that we can start reducing, but just so everybody knows. So this is what we have been working on.
Awesome.
And there is 3 of us looking at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think honestly, like, the hardest part of what we're doing with the areas of focus isn't picking categories or making the views or setting up Zendesk. It's gonna be that gap of, okay, we got to coalesce sauce and self-managed, and it's like when you're starting to learn how to jog long distances. You have a wall, and breaking through that wall sucks. For us, that wall is the separator between sauce and self-managed. And it's a weird wall because you'll see people be like, I don't know how to work a .com CI job log problem. And I'm like, what would you do in self-managed? Like, I'd ask for the job logs. Cool. So what do the job logs look like? Because you have those already. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. So what's the error? They're like, this. I'm like, sounds like you know how to work a CI job in GitLab.com, probably quicker than self-managed since you can go get the logs.
One of the other things that Wei Ming has done to that in the tool, and he has actually paired existing self-managed focused and SaaS people together to start cross-training each other so that they'll work like if a SaaS focused person gets a CI/CD ticket, they're grabbing a self-managed focused person and they're working it together so that they can both learn from each other, and they're both in their different focuses. Because I find onboarding people with that soft line between the two is much, much easier. It's the people who've been here a while, and I find generally who are more focused on self-managed, there's quite a hard line in their head about, can't go to SaaS. So, but there's also an upskilling for the SaaS people. So yeah, we are just pairing people, and that seems to be working quite well too.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this honestly comes to like one of the big values of GitLab is collaboration. I think the answer to a lot of this is collaboration. I don't know a lot about sauce. I really don't. I was a self-managed engineer. I did not know a lot. And yet I've built apps that are almost exclusively to help the sauce team. That's not because I suddenly got good at sauce. It's because I would pair with Cynthia and Tristan and other sauce people to be like, explain this thing to me I don't understand. I think a lot of what will help with this process is trying to get it where people see a hard divider to be like, it's not a hard divider. We're the same team and we should be helping each other with these various topics. And B, going, just work together on some of these stuff for a while. It's okay. Like, how many people can honestly say they knew Kubernetes really well when those tickets started rolling out? A lot of people would be like, can we jump in a call so you can help me? And I'm like, yeah, that's the only, like, that's, if that helps you learn this, cool. If you have to look at it selfishly, I would look at it as like, the more people I help, the less likely I am to get pinged about this. Like, there's a million positive ways to look at it.
We do a lot of pairing in APAC. It's kind of, I mean, it's almost a part of everybody's every single day. And I'm kind of gleaning, I wonder if we're a little bit abnormal in that. And I wonder if that gives us a little bit of an advantage in the cross training, because it is just a natural thing of the frequency of pairings that we do. And I see Artie's got her thinking face on. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think it kind of, I think that there's more visibility with APAC, because I think part of it is just the fact that you guys are using the Slack integration right now. And that provides a lot more visibility into how often APAC people are pairing. At least that's my sense. I think there's still a lot of pairing happening in EMEA and AMER. There just isn't always the same level of visibility, because not everyone is creating like a Slack thread and stuff like that. And I find that is something that APAC team members are more likely to do, is to create a Slack thread in one of the channels, whereas I find that when I pair with EMEA and AMER, they're more likely to DM or use Zoom chat to send things to each other. So I think there's still a lot of pairing happening. I think it also seems like maybe there's more pairing to some degree because actually of the size of the team in the region. Like, you know how it's like, okay, when you have like 5 people in a room, if you're always pairing with those same 5 people, it seems like you're pairing a lot. But like in AMER, we have so many people that if I wanted to pair with a different AMER person every single week, like how many months would it take me just to do that, right? Just AMER. So I think there's just part of it is perception. Part of it, I think, is that I think it's in some ways easier to get that crossover because there's enough newer people that are kind of, and even like, I think there's enough newer people that have kind of like are in that kind of hybrid mode of working. I don't think we have the numbers to kind of meet some threshold or something, to make it seem like, oh, there's lots of people doing this. Whereas in APAC, it's not a ton of people, but there's enough that you then get that feeling to say like, oh, we have a bunch of people doing hybrid. don't have that yet in AMER, and I don't think we quite have it in EMEA either, although I know EMEA is kind of like it's kind of getting there because a lot of the new people have started in SaaS, and I know that the intention is to get them up to speed with self-managed as well. But I think one of the things we could do, so I did add kind of somewhat related to that. I put it in the task list just to say, okay, there's a couple of things that are related but out of scope, but then like the names of the people just at the top of the doc. So like training, where, Wei Ming, Ronnie, and BG are all kind of working on it. And then there's also the other piece of the puzzle in my mind is the access for .com, auditor or admin or both, how that's going to work, what's going to be the criteria, that sort of thing. Can we get auditor into baseline for support? So James is working on that piece. And so I think that's going to be another piece as well. He has given us the go ahead to, like, for anyone who doesn't already have an auditor account, just submit an AR, but we're not doing a bulk one right now. We're just doing individual ones, unless that's changed, Jason.
No, I was going to say, if the goal is to make that a baseline, I can make it a baseline right now because that's what I'm supposed to do. And then at that point, we don't need an AR because it's a baseline. What ends up happening is I make a bulk thing saying all these people need this access because it's a baseline that we have changed. Admittedly, I haven't done that because we're working on like the coalescing concept and all this stuff, and James is kind of figuring out the auditor stuff. So I haven't done that, but I've told him, like, look, when you're ready to flip that switch, tell me, because I'll make the relevant issues, I'll get it merged in, and it'll basically be done within a day.
Yeah.
Especially because at that point, I'm going to kind of be like, I need my admin back because I'm probably the one who has to be doing that.
But until that happens, right? So until we add it to baseline, we have encouraged people to just submit an individual AR if they want an auditor account. And so, and basically anyone on the team should be able to get an auditor account. And part of it is going to be, part of what James is doing is looking at those who are self-managed focused, but because they might have to deal with .com emergencies, can we remove admin access from those people or not, in order to kind of limit the number of admin, like kind of actually, we've gone up in the number of admin accounts because of the .com emergencies, and we're looking at whether we can lower that back down. So it's only those focused on like the accounts and stuff that really need admin access. But anyways, there's a whole issue for that James is working on. I just wanted to make sure that that is a point that I added into this is kind of out of scope, but is related. And here's the person that is working on it. I'll try to find the issue to link to it as well, so that if anyone's interested in following the discussion to do that. But definitely it is being worked on. I know that in the past, that was one of kind of the barriers, is just being able to see, like, have some kind of account like admin to even be able to see things like job logs and whatnot. So I think an auditor account is actually a pretty good way of getting that. I actually got an auditor account as part of the trial that James kind of ran to see whether it would be viable. And I actually do that now. So I have my auditor account signed in by default, and I always use my auditor account. Least privilege, right, is the security model. Always use auditor account first, and only if I need to do something in admin that I will use my admin account. So honestly, I mean, I think like all the .com people should have auditor accounts. Anyone with an admin account should have an auditor account too.
I remember when I had an admin account, and then Lyle asked why I hadn't logged into it for 3 months, and I told him with the serious face of, I'm afraid of the account. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, y'all gave it to me as a manager. He goes, yeah. I'm like, I have no idea what that can do. I've never seen the admin side of .com. And he's like, it's like the admin side of self-managed. I'm like, Lyle, do you know how much damage I can do to a self-managed instance with admin access? He's like, yes. I'm like, now you understand why I don't want to touch .com.
Right. And I've actually heard that from a lot of self-managed people, which is why I've been encouraging them. Like, even if you have an admin account, if you want to help with .com, you're afraid of your admin account, go get an auditor account, submit an AR.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't like that I have an admin API key. I unfortunately need it for like the apps and stuff that I build for y'all, but I don't like that key. That key terrifies me. It can do a lot. Yeah, I think like closing that bridge on the access stuff, I think will help. But honestly, when it comes down to it, it's going to be like the people like me who are afraid of that access because we're not used to having admin access to self-managed. Like we sure don't have that for a customer's admin for their instance. So it terrifies us to have that level of access for GitLab.com, which is, yeah, it is not a self-managed instance. Basically, it is a huge monster of a thing that is radically different than a single omnibus. Yeah, I think collaborating, pairing. I think what Ronnie and Wei Ming and VG are working on will help us out a lot in this. Honestly, at the end of the day, if this was just an access problem, I'd go into James's issue and be like, I'm now going to go make this a baseline and have this provision for everybody because bam, problem solved. Table flip, closing work group, walk away from the explosion. But this is totally not just an access thing. I think it's also like knowing what to do. It's real easy for me to tell a customer, like, send me the job logs. But if you go, right, so here's my project, then I have to think, oh God, where's the job logs on an actual GitLab UI? And I think at the end of the day, that's the scary part is self-managed has a weakness of we don't know the UI. We rarely see the UI. But I think being able to help close that gap of great, we'll show you the UI so you feel comfortable. And then at that point, it's like, it's just a self-managed ticket. It's just the self-managed instance is the scariest, biggest self-managed instance ever.
Yeah, so I'm going to work with Ronnie too on kind of looking over the .com onboarding issue, but the purpose of that one was always to try to bridge that gap. And basically, it's actually the .com onboarding right now assumes a certain amount of GitLab knowledge and basically says, hey, this is like the architecture for .com. And this is like where you find the logs. It actually assumes a certain amount of GitLab knowledge at the moment. But yeah, I think that's fine. If we Ronnie, if you know of any like issues or anything around the training and the work that the three of you are doing, if you want to maybe just throw that under the task list at the top of the doc. Just so it's easy to reference. I left a space for you to kind of plop those in.
Right. I will add mine. I think I have Wei Ming's and VG as well. I will look for them and put it there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think where we're at right now in the work group is just figuring out how we can basically help prepare the team for this change. Because me and Cynthia played in Zendesk, and it's like, yeah, this change is actually easy in Zendesk. It takes like no work. It actually simplifies a lot of work, which is nice because like, yay, less work for support ops. So honestly, I think where we're at now is like, we've got strong categories. We're pretty confident and we saw good results using them. The changes in Zendesk are cake. So what we're now looking at is, okay, so how do we get to implementing this next quarter where we can go, here's what we want to implement. Here's where our roadblocks are. How can we help to destroy those roadblocks so we can get this live on X date or whatever? I think the trickiest part isn't going to be access. It's going to be training. I think that's honestly going to be the trickiest part. And we just kind of have to, I guess, gauge with the team as a whole of like, what's a realistic expectation for having 100% of the team cross-trained in SaaS and self-managed? I'd love to say and LNR, but I'll slow that down a bit. I get that's asking a lot.
Well, LNR we're considering, at least for the time being, an area of focus in and of itself. So I think that it's fair to say that it's more the focus of cross-training, self-managed and SaaS. I am honestly of the opinion that I don't feel like like just this phrasing of like 100% cross-trained, I don't feel like we need to be like 100% cross-trained. I will say that there might be a period of time where, you know, people are still feeling like they're learning, but I think if we get at least part way there for everyone, make sure everyone has access, make sure everyone has at least gone through whatever kind of cross-training onboarding kind of thing, right?
I guess what I should say is by 100% cross-trained, I don't mean like, oh, you're the master of .com and self-managed, because find me the person who's the master of both of those things 100%, and I'll probably call them Will Chandler. But like, that's getting everyone that level of trained. I don't think that's realistic, because we kind of almost encourage people not to strive to try to learn everything and become a master of everything, because that's a daunting task. I with a warm heart remember Cynthia being like, I'm going to pair with every person on support, and watching how long that took and went, that was just pairing. And there's at least that many things in GitLab to learn about. Like, can you imagine trying to become the master of that many things? Because by the time you're done with it, like, they'll be like, great, there's 15 new features and more things have been added, and best of luck to you.
I think the I think the goal will be for people to feel at least comfortable doing the initial work in any side. Like, if they've come from self-management, but they are able to at least gather useful information for the expert to continue working later on. I think at least that will help with the initial part of the ticket. That will help with FRT. That will overall help the objectives we have. But I think, as you said, getting somebody to be expert of all, no, but at least getting people to feel comfortable enough to ask the right question, gather the right information, and knowing where they need an expert, I think that will be a feasible goal to have.
Yeah, Jane?
Two things. I think one, I relate to learning languages. You don't become an expert at it until you're immersed in it and you're surrounded by it, and you're uncomfortable with it for a time, because that's the nature of learning. You're uncomfortable and you get better because you're in there doing it. I wonder, as a next iteration for implementation, can we do two things? One, look at our volume numbers, our percent numbers, work out, okay, we probably need no more than this percentage of the team on this focus area, and then choose one focus area that we go, okay, let's start with this and ask some people to start interacting with it. Perhaps a good option, because I know we've had a lot of people do training modules for authentication related things, so SAML, SCIM, whatever else. Perhaps that would be a good option of a one to go, right, what percentage, because we don't want to put 15 people on it when we actually only need 3. And then identify some people that we can put into that and start using that view as part of their day-to-day work for the areas of focus to go, right, how do the mechanics of this work day to day? Because that's a learning that we need to get as well. We need to work out how it feels for people to work and what the gotchas are, because the better we can understand that and smooth those out before we subject everyone to it, the better the adoption is going to be and the lower the resistance is going to be as well.
Yeah, and I honestly think, like, I would love to be able to boastfully say, oh yeah, the implementation is 100% rollout. We're just going to implement all 10 whatever categories it is, and LOL. But I've learned from past that, like, that's too big of a change too quickly, and you're going to have a bunch of issues. And if you're doing it with 100% of the team in all 3 regions, what you end up with is cataclysmic failure in 100% of the team in 3 regions, and it becomes hard to recover from. So I would definitely say that, like, picking 2 or 3 categories, and some of them are easy, like sauce account. Cool. That's a real easy one to pick. LNR, also a really easy one to pick. And then picking one that is more technical, like the authentication authorization stuff. So we basically have, right, these are tickets that pretty much anyone can work. We have tooling to help with it. That's the sauce account stuff for the most part. And then we have, great, this is LNR. We already have a dedicated set of people focusing on that. Cool. And then we have our one that's more technical of, okay, here's authorization and authentication. That one's going to be more technical and require a technical skill set to figure out. it's not process related so much as it is, yeah, this is a technical skill. Because I would argue L&R and sauce account is, yeah, those are process related things. And anyone could theoretically work them if we document the process so well that it's literally following a checklist. But stuff like authentication and, you know, authorization, yeah, there's no checklist we could make that's going to be 100% thorough on those. Those take a skill set.
I hate to say that that is actually the one category where I'm like hesitant to trial with, if because
How radically different is SAML on .com and SAML tickets in self-managed?
it's a different feature altogether. And the other is that you need an admin account. There's no question about that. If you're helping with authentication and authorization problems on .com, you need an admin account, at least at the moment, right? Like, so part of what James is doing in looking at auditor and admin accounts is trying to figure out what are ways that we could kind of bridge the gap between auditor and admin in the places that we don't have right now. So even things like account tickets, could we make some of those functions available through chat ops in order to make it so that someone could have an auditor account, but then to work on account tickets, they could do it through chat ops. So that is one other piece that James is looking at. Unfortunately, the one thing you can't even see with an auditor account is settings, and SAML is locked behind settings. Now I don't think it's impossible. Like, you could get screenshots from the customer and you really only need one screenshot in GitLab for SAML to see all the settings and everything. So I don't think it's impossible. I just think I think it would actually be an interesting exercise to kind of work with self-managed to see how far they feel they could get without an admin account to do authentication and authorization. But if you want to be able to see it yourself, you need an admin account. So if anything, I was thinking CI/CD would probably be easier. We have a number of experts already. And the most common thing you want to do is see job logs, and that you can easily do with an auditor account.
So I'm actually going to argue that we should have the two easy ones, sauce account and L&R. Those are easy to separate. And then we should do authentication, authorization, and CI/CD. Because the authentication one is, like you said, that's like challenge mode for what we're doing here. If we can get that one to work with what we're doing, the rest of them are cake. So if we can get the hard one to work, and I would argue CI/CD is going to be hard because, yes, you can be a pretty good expert in CI/CD, but man, those tickets can go like a million different ways. Like from what I've seen with like the .com SAML tickets, like they're pretty much they follow a pretty good routine. But a CI/CD ticket is like, yeah, you quickly jump from what's the job logs to, oh, you need some in-depth knowledge of what you're doing.
That's why
So I'm wondering,
we do have a number of
if-
CI/CD experts already, so I am kind of hoping for that. I think that authorization and authentication, we don't really have a lot of current experts, but I do think that, as Jane said, we have enough people probably learning it that we could probably trial it.
It would make their learning a whole lot easier too. And it would parallel it with trying to get buy-in or some experience in this approach to things with the areas of focus work group. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
and I think, like Cynthia, because you have an expertise in the authentication
Look, honestly, like CI/CD and auth are two of my like 3 areas. I probably only have like 3 areas outside of like accounts.
I mean, honestly, like I see you work those SAML tickets in .com a lot.
That's because I'm the most expert in SaaS auth right now. And even self-managed, I help out with for SAML.
Well, here's what I'm thinking for that one. Maybe you could, because it is more .com admin level focused, you could write a prescription of like, or like a list of steps of, no matter what, we need to see, you need to see this. It would even be good to kind of get the customers in the expectation of, if you ask about SAML, we're going to ask you for your settings. Honestly, from a security standpoint, I'd be slightly concerned if I'm like, I'm using an authentication tool, and I'm like, and my reply I got from support is, so I'm looking at your settings, and I'm like, what? No, don't look at my settings. And I get like, yeah, we're admins, we have that ability, but at the same time, like, I would also be like, no. So it might actually be a good experience to start kind of teaching the customer to send those to us, especially since it's like, you can redact the things you don't want us to see. Because that's something self-managed is very used to saying of, hey, can you send us this? Please redact whatever it is you would not like us to see.
Yeah, like.
So I think a good iteration would be both, but I think also if, well, what I would say with this, Cynthia, is if you, like with what we have in our handbook, our processes, our documentation stuff, if you don't feel like a self-managed person could pick up that ticket and at least have an idea of what to do, that tells us we have a lacking in our documentation and our processes, and maybe we can fix that to help us with this trial.
Yeah, and I actually have an issue to look over both the self-managed and SaaS documentation for SAML specifically, because we have a bunch of duplicate content and all this other stuff. The docs are formatted like completely differently right now. So one of the things I want to do is actually partially consolidate and partially make the SAML docs consistent. So I think actually I think we could do it. Like I said, I think it'll be interesting to see how people deal with it if they don't have an admin account, and how to actually walk someone through, because it's required if you want to see the settings. It's required if like you want to see certain things, but at the same time, the customer could easily provide all of that information for you.
And I'm wondering if that's what we kind of need here, is almost like a marriage of how .com Sauce is doing it now and how self-managed is doing it now. Right, Sauce has the power to go look at these job logs, but the customer should really be sending those for us. We shouldn't play hunt down the job logs. So I'm wondering if it's what we're looking for to kind of help bridge that gap, is a marriage between the two of, if the customer provides the link, we should have auditors so we can look at it. If they haven't, we should be asking them to, hey, we need to know what job is failing, send it to us. Because look, yeah, I get that, like Cynthia, you could go look through all their jobs to figure that out.
Oh no, I don't do that.
Argue that
I absolutely refuse.
Like, I absolutely argue of, you should not do it. Like, I can, if somebody's like, my customer's having a problem, they submitted a ticket, I could with Zendesk go look at every ticket that just got submitted and find that ticket. I will not. Like, that is a waste of time and effort, when the correct answer is, what's the ticket? In this case, what's the job logs?
Yeah.
I think honestly, like, a marriage between the two of how both of us work is a good thing on this one. Of, we might see .com people who are like, oh yeah, I go dig for all their stuff, and self-managed might go, but why? And they're going to have to be like, oh, well, the customer, like, I want to make them happy. It's like, right, but do you think they're happy if you just wasted an hour looking for the logs when they could send it back in 5 seconds?
Yeah. So I wonder if I'm just looking at the time, and I just want to make sure that we have next steps. I don't know who would be the best person to do it, but I would be interested to see, I don't know, a spreadsheet or something, or even like built into actually we could even potentially build it into that Zendesk dashboard, Jason, is like, then start doing things like taking the percentage and the number of ICs we have, and then kind of just pulling a general number, like this is how many, or based on even the number of tickets in each area, and then doing it to say like, hey, this is how many people we need in this region for this area of focus. But then I think that would be a really good trial to look at, like, okay, if we have that many people, or if we have a percentage of that, are we effectively working those tickets? And I think it'll also help ahead of the training, because then we can say, hey, we need, based on our number of tickets, we need X number of people in this region, in this area of focus, but we only have one, right? Or something like that. And then, so then we can get ahead of it a little bit by saying, hey, we only have one in this area. We kind of need at least 2 or 3. Who on the team or in that region could we find that might be willing to at least kind of train up a little bit, take the training module for, and start, working that area a bit more. So I know that number of tickets isn't going to quite work out per se. We could maybe try to, I don't know, see what you can figure out.
I'll play around with it and talk with Ilya. He could probably help point me in, like, oh, you want this.
Just bearing in mind that we're not getting rid of the existing views at the moment. We're adding to it. So we're not eliminating the ability to deliver on tickets. We're just creating a way that someone can actually focus on something as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the plan isn't even to get rid of we're going to combine some of the existing views, right? But we're still not going to get rid of them even in the future. Like the only thing we'll do is kind of combine self-managed and SaaS, but we're still not going to get rid of like the SLA view or the FRT view, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not planning to get rid of those. But I think it will help, with the training piece and the people working on that, to try to, again, even for the managers, just kind of get a sense of, okay, this is kind of the target for number of people in an area of focus. Are we there? Do we need to train more people ahead of this a little bit? And it might help with just general resourcing of tickets even now, right? Regardless of what we do with it in terms of implementing it for areas of focus. Also, very quickly, I just copied a couple of tasks that are still listed that need to be done.
I think we'll tackle those next time. It'll help with Tom Cooney and such in play.
I'm just wondering if we should start drafting any of these. Should we have a issue? Or should we just keep using the doc to throw ideas in? Jason as our chair, what do you think?
I think because those are going to be the more in-depth things to kind of flesh out, I think it'd be good to make a Google Doc for us to start kind of typing up some of the ideas we have to get that accomplished. So I'll make a Google Doc and kind of link them, one for that are basically for the area of focus guidance to answer the questions of how do you get assigned? What's the rotation look like? Who determines distribution numbers? Fun stuff like that. And then, we'll basically figure out how to flesh all that out. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording since we're basically at the end.